Reinhardt and Dr. Gustafson.
You can begin at any time.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dawn Walker, and I'm Vice President of Communications and Marketing for SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. Welcome to one of the most important discussions that we're going to have among many. As you may be aware, this is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and we wanted to make sure to tap into a resource that we have at SUNY Downstate that others may not be familiar with, to share some work about what we're doing. The Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease at Downstate is a phenomenal entity, one that we really want to share with you all. This conversation came about because partly, there's a personal interest for me. My mom is at the early stages of dementia and Alzheimer's, so this is a very important cause for me, but I also realize how very important it is for other people. What we're going to do today is to spend the next hour and a half talking to some of the most important people who are working in this particular community, and they will provide us with some great resources and understanding of what dementia is and what Alzheimer's is. Today, you'll learn about the differences between Alzheimer's and dementia and other cognitive health impairments. You'll hear about the statistics as they impact our communities. You learn about age-friendly care and other services that community-based organizations in tandem with SUNY Downstate and our researchers and our healthcare practitioners provide to you all. Today's panel discussion will be led by Dr. David Berger, who is the Chief Executive Officer for SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, University Hospital at Downstate. I'd like to read a brief bio for Dr. Berger. With more than 25 years of healthcare leadership experience at several academic institutions, Dr. Berger leads the University Hospital at Downstate and its inpatient and outpatient services, accountable care organizations, community health centers, home care, and other related entities. He provides operational and fiscal oversight for UHD. Dr. Berger also oversees the development and implementation of hospital-wide policies and procedures, promoting quality patient care and patient satisfaction. Dr. Berger holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from Harper College at SUNY Binghamton and a Master of Science in Healthcare Management from Harvard University's T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He received his medical degree and completed a general surgery residency at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. Additionally, he completed a fellowship in surgical oncology at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Dr. Berger, I'd like to extend a great deal of gratitude to you for helping to support this program that we're putting on today with your support and the work that the folks at the Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease, led by Dr. Michael Reinhardt, the work that's being done at Downstate. I thank you all, and I thank our partners from Caring Kind for being here today and from Sunnyside, as well as for the community work that we do ourselves at SUNY Downstate. And now, to Dr. Berger, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dawn, for that very kind introduction. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's program, What to Do When Your Loved One Develops Cognitive Health Problems. Alzheimer's disease is extremely personal to me and to my family. My wife's father and my wife's father's mother, my wife's grandmother, both succumbed from Alzheimer's disease. And as the primary caregivers for my wife's father, we realized quickly the burden on the family in dealing with this very devastating disease. So this is extremely personal to me, and I'm glad we're able to share the resources that we have both at Downstate and within the Brooklyn community with you today. So kicking off this afternoon's discussion is Dr. Michael Reinhardt. Dr. Reinhardt is an assistant professor and clinical advisory dean director, the Geriatric Psychiatry Fellowship Director, and he leads the Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. Dr. Reinhardt received his BS in biochemistry at the University of Rochester before studying medicine at St. George's University of Medicine. He completed his residency in psychiatry at SUNY Downstate, serving as chief resident during his final year. He completed a fellowship in geriatric psychiatry at SUNY Downstate, where he now serves as clinical assistant dean, assistant professor of psychiatry, and director of the Geriatric Psychiatry Fellowship Program. He's the co-director of the Brooklyn Initiative to Develop Geriatrics Education and associate director, as I mentioned, of the Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease. Dr. Reinhardt has won awards as an educator and contributed to this geriatric psychiatry literature, publishing 3 book chapters, 4 peer-reviewed articles, and multiple posters on topics related to geriatric mental health. In addition, he pioneered Downstate's first telehealth program, serving homebound older adults with dementia. He's board certified both in psychiatry and geriatric psychiatry. And Dr. Reinhardt is going to present us with an overview of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Dr. Reinhardt.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today to talk about something that is for everyone on this call, and I imagine many of our attendees as well, near and dear to our hearts. Not only are we all engaged in helping our community, but many of us have had our own personal battles with these illnesses. My own grandfather suffered from not Alzheimer's disease, but vascular dementia. Having been a lifelong smoker, he developed cardiovascular disease, which evolved into cerebrovascular disease. And that led to memory change, personality and behavior change. And it was remarkably difficult for our family. And so like all of us that have spoken so far today, it's personal. And we all want to be here in the community, making sure that everyone that has access to our center is getting the care they need for their family member and for themselves as caregivers to stay healthy. So let's talk about this. So I have no conflicts of interest, and I'm going to be talking just a bit about what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's disease, the symptoms of these illnesses, and understand what you should be doing if you yourself are suffering from memory changes, behavioral changes, or if your loved one is. So a common thing that comes up in our service, and I imagine many services like ours, is what really is dementia and what is Alzheimer's disease and what is the difference? So it's important to understand that dementia is sort of a category of symptoms or syndromes that have to do with memory loss or changes in other areas of brain function and cognitive abilities. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia worldwide, here in Brooklyn as well. A diagnosis of dementia is established when one area of brain function, cognition, memory, for instance, has substantially declined. It has to be associated with functional decline, meaning you're having difficulty handling your daily affairs, your banking, being able to cook for yourself, being able to get around without getting lost. And those impairments should be due to the underlying changes in your brain. And there are multiple subcategories of dementia or different diagnoses that fall under the rubric of dementia, like Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, or you may hear these illnesses called neurocognitive disorders, which is the more modern parlance or phrasing for these illnesses. Alzheimer's disease, as I mentioned, is the most common form of dementia, making up to about 60 to 80% of cases. It's a progressive illness that usually starts after the age of 65 and is due to a buildup, we think, of waste products in the brain, plaques and tangles that disrupt communication in the brain, eventually causing brain cell death, declines in brain size, and loss of brain function and physical function. It's not normal aging. There's a common misconception in our community that memory loss is a part of getting older, and we're here to tell you that it's not. It is an abnormal change, and we're here to help with that. So this is just a quick diagram to show what's happening in the brain. On the right-hand side, you would see a healthy brain cell, a neuron, which is relatively clean and healthy looking. And on the right lower side, you'll see a neuron that has the beginnings of Alzheimer's disease. Inside of the brain cell, you see the buildup of neurofibrillary tangles. And outside of the brain cell, you see the buildup of amyloid plaques. Now, of course, the changes in the brain are much more complicated than what's being shown in this diagram. There are changes in how the brain is handling waste, how it's clearing it correctly. There are local changes in inflammation and all sorts of other inputs into what's happening here. But ultimately, waste is building up and the brain cell becomes unhealthy and eventually passes away. And in our clinic, I often use the sort of metaphor of these wooden tower games to describe Alzheimer's disease to our families and patients. Your brain has the ability, just like the tower does, to be able to handle removing a certain number of pieces from the tower. You may have compensation as it gets added up on top of the tower for a period of time, but eventually as more and more brain cells become sick, eventually the tower or your brain can't handle it anymore. And it gets expressed in the tower game by things falling over. But in your brain, it gets expressed as dysfunction, right? Memory becomes more impaired, functions become impaired. And then you need more assistance, right? To be able to maintain your day-to-day life and age in place at home. There are multiple stages of Alzheimer's disease. There are different classification systems, either mild, moderate, or severe, or a 7-stage system of staging Alzheimer's disease, ranging from stage 1, in which there's no noticeable deficit, all the way through stage 7, in which there is progressive loss of memory, ability to handle your day-to-day affairs, ability to navigate independently, to cook independently, all the way up through stage 7, in which we eventually lose our verbal skills, motor skills, an ability to handle even very basic activities of daily living, like bathing, dressing, and feeding ourselves. This image is courtesy of our colleagues at the University of Pittsburgh. So beyond this being a personal cause for many of us today, it's important to understand that Alzheimer's disease is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. Before this most recent year, it was the 6th leading cause of death. Of course, COVID has struck older adults in devastating ways and shifted the epidemiology a bit. And the pandemic has also contributed significantly to deaths in persons suffering from Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, increasing mortality in our dear patients by 17% nationally. An enormous number of people nationally are suffering from Alzheimer's disease, more than 6 million. And there's over 11 million caregivers in the United States providing unpaid care for all of these patients at enormous personal and systemic cost. And this is an area of medicine where we're working hard to improve, but we haven't had as much success. While in cardiovascular medicine, deaths from cardiovascular disease have been on the decline over the past 2 decades, deaths from Alzheimer's disease have increased remarkably. Despite this, the number of older adults getting regular cognitive assessments from their primary care providers or specialists like me is relatively small. We want to move the dial on this. We want people to get checked and to come in so that we can intervene early. Brooklyn also has a remarkable population of older adults suffering from Alzheimer's disease. About 55,000 people in Brooklyn are currently suffering from Alzheimer's disease, with about 110,000 Brooklyn family members and caregivers affected by the far-reaching effects of this disease in our local population alone. Really devastating. So to break it down for you, right? If you or your loved one are suffering from any of the signs or symptoms that I'm going to list on the next 2 slides, this is not normal aging. And these are things that you should be seeking help for. Memory loss or changes in brain function should not disrupt daily life. There may be some slowing down as to how quickly we think. It may take longer to bring up information as we get older, but short-term memory loss is rarely normal. Changes in how you handle or solve problems, or having difficulty completing familiar tasks, being uncertain about time or place that you're currently in or the current date and time, having trouble understanding common images or spatial relationships between things, which is very dangerous in Brooklyn. Crossing the street requires remarkable sophistication and understanding our 3D environment to do it safely. New problems with finding words when you're speaking or when you're writing, or losing things without the ability to retrace your steps and find them again. Declines in your judgment ability, or finding that you're withdrawing from work or social activities, sensing perhaps that things aren't the same, or just being unable to engage in those activities. Mood and personality changes, or other behavioral symptoms. If these things are happening to you, you need help. your family member needs help, your loved one needs help, and your primary care providers and specialists are here for you to make sure that we can do whatever we can to help you. And you should always remember that even though these things are happening, not all memory loss is created equal, and some causes of memory loss are entirely reversible. Thyroid conditions, vitamin deficiencies, and certain infections. And it's important to get screened early so that we can make sure that we've tested for all of the possible conditions that can be reversed or improved to optimize your brain health. And I mentioned something earlier that I'm not going to dwell on too much, but it's important to remember that many mental health complaints in late life have to do with cognitive changes, particularly new onset mental health changes. There's a remarkable prevalence of what we call neuropsychiatric symptoms or behavioral health symptoms in Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And these symptoms contribute significantly both to patient declines in quality of life and to caregiver distress. And we are in particular good at helping with these symptoms. You don't have to suffer with them alone. We can help you and we can make these things better. So there are multiple things that increase risk for Alzheimer's disease and dementia, spanning from age as the number one risk factor to polygenic risk or family history, and of course, other medical conditions, toxic exposures like smoking cigarettes and head injuries. Dr. Gustafsson is going to talk a little bit more about these things in detail after I finish speaking. And there are increased risks in the population that we treat right here around SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University that are important to emphasize. Older African Americans are perhaps 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than their Caucasian peers. And it's important to recognize the risk in our community and if things are changing to get help. If you want to keep your brain healthy, keep your heart healthy, keep yourself healthy. Talk to your doctor to help establish a diagnosis. To do this, we do memory testing, blood work. We use brain scans and other diagnostic imaging and diagnostic techniques to establish a thorough history and sense of what's happening in your brain before a diagnosis is fully established. Now, many of you may be thinking that some of what I've said is doom and gloom, but we have some fair evidence that Dr. Gustafsson will talk about in more detail that a good percentage of Alzheimer's disease may be prevented through healthy lifestyle changes, including having a brain healthy diet, engaging in social activity, and minimizing toxic exposures like cigarettes, alcohol, and some medications, quite frankly. And engaging in regular exercise, both physical exercise and, of course, mental exercise, cognitive activities. Treatment is sophisticated and multimodal. It spans psychosocial interventions, which are among the most important interventions for both our patients and our families, like social activities and day programmings, to various forms of therapy, physical interventions to optimize physical health and nutrition, and medications, which include currently 2 classes of medications, acetylcholinesterase inhibitors and NMDA modulators, and a more recent addition that is targeting amyloid in the brain, in which we're still deciding about the evidence. And of course, there are clinical trials available for those of interest, trying new therapies to improve these devastating illnesses, and caregiver interventions to keep our really important caregivers safe and healthy. And you, as consumers, as families and health members, should be engaged actively in making sure that you and your loved ones are getting age-friendly healthcare that spans all of the things that impact older adults' health, right? Spanning what matters to the patient, making sure their medications are safe, and that older adults are getting regular cognitive assessments, the mentation, and maintaining mobility, which is important for what matters, limiting medication use, and of course, mentation. Downstate is engaged in a process to make sure that all of our services are age and dementia friendly, something we're really proud of. We have at Downstate a center of excellence for Alzheimer's disease in which all of our employees and community members can engage in comprehensive gold standard diagnostic care for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. We're one of 10 centers in New York State and one of 3 in New York City. We have enhanced clinical trial partnerships with NYU and Columbia to make sure that our communities get access to advances in Alzheimer's and related dementia science. We were recently renewed, and we're excited that this center will be available for the community for at least another 5 years, and we're hoping many more years to come. At our center, we engage in really comprehensive assessments, and we're here for you. Our assessments are a minimum of 2 to 3 hours in length and span comprehensive histories, physical, neurologic exams, and neuropsychologic testing, in addition to diagnostic testing, including laboratory, brain imaging, and other tests as indicated. We have an interprofessional, diverse team with multiple language proficiencies available so that everyone can feel at home. Everything is handled with the utmost confidentiality. And if you happen to be a downstate employee, a family member, all of your health information and your family's health information is handled with the utmost privacy per downstate policy. We're expanding over the next few years across New York City, pursuing partnerships with federally qualified health centers around the city to make sure that downstate is really engaged in its mission to serve Brooklyn and our surrounding communities who have underserved populations that need advanced gold standard care, particularly regarding geriatrics and Alzheimer's disease. If you need to reach us, here is our contact information. We would love to hear from you, either for clinical concerns, or if you want our team to come out and talk to any of your personal affiliations, your organizations. We're very happy to come out and give talks to anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Reinhardt. That was an excellent summary of the disease. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Deborah Gustafson. Dr. Gustafson is a professor at the State University of New York Downstate Health Sciences University in the Department of Neurology. She is the Director of Neuroepidemiology and guest professor at the University of Gothenburg, Sweden. Dr. Gustafson is principal investigator of an NIH-funded multi-center trial. She is the Brooklyn Clinical Research Site and co-chairs the Aging Work Group Leading in Cognition and Frailty. Dr. Gustafson is the current chair of the International Society of Vascular, Behavioral, and Cognitive Disorders. And Dr. Gustafson has researched the epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias for over 20 years, with a focus on adiposity and neuroendocrine aspects of brain health. Dr. Gustafson is going to talk to us this afternoon about the epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease and dementia.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here today, and I'm happy that people have chosen to attend this session. This is very important for the aging of the globe, in fact, and beyond Brooklyn. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on the epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. We just heard, and we're well aware that age and aging is the main risk factor for most neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's disease. And after you reach the age of 70 and continue surviving, your risk for Alzheimer's disease increases almost exponentially until the end of your life. Women have been shown to have a potentially higher risk for Alzheimer's disease than men. However, there are conflicting reports about this. So when I was asked to present on the epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease, I decided to share with you the report of the Lancet Commission, which was published 2 years ago. The Lancet comprised an expert panel of 28 global dementia experts to review the massive amount of literature that's out there on risk and protective factors for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And this was following a commission that had also been assembled in 2017 and reviewing the literature at that time. And they reported in 2017 that there were 9 modifiable risk factors for dementia that the literature suggested were most important. And these risk factors included less education, hypertension, hearing impairment, smoking, obesity, depression, physical inactivity, diabetes, and infrequent social contact. So when this committee convened for the 2020 report and reviewed the literature again within the intervening 3 years. There were 3 additional risk factors added, and those include excessive alcohol consumption, head injury, and air pollution. And the committee estimated that by modifying these 12 risk factors, a person might delay or prevent up to 40% of dementias. So knowing that these risk factors have been reported repeatedly in the literature, what does that mean in terms of actions for risk factor reduction across the life course? As Dr. Reinhardt just mentioned, there are things that we can do, and a lot of what we can do is controlling vascular risk. What's good for the heart is good for the brain, as you just heard. So the committee made several recommendations related to actions for risk factor reduction that include the following. The first one, when it comes to blood pressure, is to maintain a systolic blood pressure of 130 millimeters of mercury or less from around the age of 40 years. It seems that systolic blood pressure is more important than diastolic blood pressure when it comes to dementia risk. And we do know that antihypertensive treatment for hypertension is the only known effective medication for dementia prevention. So if you've been prescribed an antihypertensive medication, you need to take it not only for your hypertension, but also for potentially your later life dementia risk. The committee recommended to encourage use of hearing aids for hearing loss and to reduce hearing loss by protecting ears from excessive noise exposure, reduce exposure to air pollution and secondhand tobacco smoke, prevent head injury, limit alcohol use, as we know that alcohol misuse and drinking more than 21 units weekly increase the risk of dementia. Avoid smoking uptake, so don't initiate, don't even start to smoke, and support smoking cessation to stop smoking, because we know this reduces the risk of dementia in later life. Provide all children with primary and secondary education, reduce obesity and the linked condition of diabetes, and to sustain adult life and possibly even later life physical activity, and address other putative risk factors for dementia like sleep through lifestyle interventions, because those types of things will improve general health. The committee also made a statement about tackling inequality and protecting people with dementia. Many of the risk factors that I just mentioned, those 12, cluster around inequalities, which occur particularly in Black, Asian, and minority or underrepresented ethnic groups and in vulnerable populations. So tackling these factors involve not only health promotion, but societal action to improve the circumstances in which people live their lives. An example of these include creating environments that have physical activity as a norm, reducing the population profile of blood pressure rising with age through better patterns of nutrition and physical activity, and reducing potential excessive noise exposure. Now, one of the other things that the committee commented on was the fact that dementia is rising more in low-income and middle-income countries than high-income countries. And this is because of general population and aging, as well as the fact that middle-income countries have adopted quote-unquote Western lifestyles and habits, which has led to unhealthy aging in those communities. And the reason why I do bring up this point is because some of our local immigrant communities do come from these areas of the globe. And so those things are important to remember. So I just want to emphasize what you heard from Dr. Reinhardt and what I've shared with you related to risk factors for dementia is that the majority of them are vascular in nature. AD, as you just learned, is defined neuropathologically as the accumulation of plaques and tangles. However, there is a strong vascular health component to brain aging. And therefore, by controlling vascular risk, maintaining a healthy weight, avoiding type 2 diabetes, taking your antihypertensive medications, your lipid lowering medications, will go a long way in terms of lowering your risk for cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And also remember that these conditions also lead, as you just heard, to cerebrovascular disease and stroke, which are very strong risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. And finally, another thing to remember, especially in a diverse community that we live in New York City as well as Brooklyn, is that we identify factors that are associated with risk and prevention, but we have to remember that when we design interventions and how we interact with our patients or other people around us in terms of what they can do to help lower their risk, what needs to be recommended needs to be fit for purpose and fit for aging in both local and global communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gustafson. Next, we're going to be hearing from Ms. Clivia Torres and Iting Chang. One second.
Okay, hi, good afternoon.
One second.
Okay,
Ms. Chang is a social worker, and she received her BA Communication and Psychology minor at the University of California, San Diego, and obtained her master's degree at NYU Silver School of Social Work. Before joining the Center of Excellence in Alzheimer's disease, she worked at SCO Family Services to serve immigrant populations by providing counseling, support groups, community outreach, and supervised social work interns. Ms. Chang has served as a care manager and outreach educator for the center since 2018. In 2019, she resumed administrative and evaluative leadership for the center and is responsible for grant reporting, required submissions, data collection, quality assurance, etc. She is fluent in English, Mandarin, Taiwanese, and Cantonese. Ms. Torres is a bilingual licensed clinical social worker who earned her Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and minor in Spanish from Fordham and her Master in Science and Social Work from Columbia. She has extensive working experience with the homeless population of families and children and the geriatric population. She was a special education school social worker in various capacities in Manhattan and the Bronx, and she served as an intermediary between the pre-K, elementary, and junior high school students and their families. Ms. Torres and Ms. Chang are going to talk about patient, caregiver, and community support services for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias.
okay, so I'm gonna start. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Clivia Torres, and I'm one of the social workers, and I'm here with my colleague, E.T. So we're gonna talk a little about the role that the social worker has at the Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's disease. So both of us are licensed clinical social workers, and we actually work in an interprofessional, interdisciplinary approach. We work with the residents that we have, we work with the fellows and the students. We have medical students, we have nursing students, and we have PA students that come to our clinic for their rotation. Some of them can be here for a week, some of them can be here for 2 to 3 months. So we are usually involved in the initial assessment. So we sit with the team, we sit on the intake with the interviewing the caregiver to help determine and assess what are some of the needs that the patient has, what are some of the needs that the family has, because each family is different. We may see patients that live alone and they need a lot of extensive support, and they may need home care on a 24-hour basis. We also see families that have, we also see patients that have families that can help. They have family members that can really help and are very involved. So Eaton and I usually sit in with the whole team, and then we, speak with the family, and we discuss with them what are some of the services that they feel that the patient may need. We also speak with the patient if he or she does have the capacity to share with us, like what matters to them, what they would like for themselves, like what kind of care they would want and things like that. When we're also assessing the situation, we do make appropriate referrals to some of the community agencies that we partner with. For example, if a family needs advocacy or they need help trying to get home care, okay, we do refer them to the appropriate agencies for assistance with that. Home care is one of the biggest challenges that we encounter in the clinic, because sometimes the patient does need home care, but they do not have Medicaid. And as a lot of us know, in order to get around the clock home care, you definitely need Medicaid. Okay, Medicare does provide short-term home care, but to get like ongoing home care, you definitely need Medicaid. And then we refer the patient or the family to the appropriate agencies that can discuss the Medicaid process. They can help them complete the Medicaid application. Sometimes we refer patients to care management. They may need someone to check in on them. They may need someone to just help them, fill out and complete certain forms. Okay, so another responsibility that we have as social workers in the clinic is that we do a lot of community outreach. We also attend a lot of community health fairs. And the mission of those visits is for us to make sure that we can help raise awareness of what dementia and Alzheimer's are. We also want people to understand the importance of early detection. Like Dr. Reinhardt said, we were funded again for another 5 years, and we really hope to reach more people in the community to help raise awareness, to explain to people like the early signs of memory loss, and to encourage people to get evaluated and tested. Some people come because they just want like a baseline, how they're doing, and then they come back like in several months, or they come back in another year. And then the patients that we see that may need more services and more monitoring, we see them more on a regular basis. Ethan and I, when families come to the clinic, we actually spend a lot of time with the family members. We talk to them about like what the disease entails, what the disease will look like for some of the patients, depending on the stage. Like Dr. Reinhardt mentioned, there are different stages to the disease. So we try to come up with a care plan for the individual patient that will basically help maintain the patient in their home, because most patients want to remain in their home. We also do the same presentations for like the community members. We go to a lot of senior centers and we actually do the presentations. We also speak with like different agencies. Sometimes we just get phone calls from different agencies that want information about our program, and we share that information with them. So, you know, and we also talk about like the book that's a 36-hour day to give caregivers an understanding that their life is now going to be a little different because they have to prepare for the patient. They have to sort of encourage the patient to do certain things. You know, for some of the patients, bathing becomes a challenge. So we spend a lot of time giving them tidbits and ideas on how to resolve that. We definitely do. Sometimes we do have family meetings and it's outside of the working day because some of the families are not available during 9 to 5. So they will ask us if we can do like a Zoom meeting in the evening, or like on a Saturday, and Ethan and I definitely do that because our mission is to help raise the awareness and to be as supportive as we can to the families. But we also understand that we cannot do the ongoing support all the time. So then we refer to the agencies that we have partnered with. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague now. Thank you.
So as Cleva has mentioned, as part of our intake, we usually have a conversation we facilitate the conversation about what is advanced care planning with patients and caregiver. So this advanced care planning allows the patients to plan for future medical care in case they are not able to make the decisions for themselves. And during COVID, their families make decisions for their loved ones, not knowing what the patients wanted. And sometimes that we see there's a cultural reason that the family members are hesitant and resistant to bring it up because they will consider having a different agenda against the patients. So we understand this is a very delicate matter and a very sensitive topic to some family. But we also realize it's very important for the family and the patient to know what type of care they want and what are their wishes, especially for patients who have been diagnosed with terminal illness or have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. It will be helpful to know what patients' wishes and plans are so that their plans can be honored when they are not able to make that decision for themselves. So the advance directives and power of attorney are only effective when the patients are not at the capacity to make the decisions. And usually that have to be determined by the doctors, usually psychiatrists. And in the event that the patients are no longer at the capacity to make the decisions and there are no advance directives or power of attorney in place, the next of kin will be making the decision for them. Usually a legal spouse comes first and then the children will be the next. However, we have encountered situations where the patient is incapable of making decisions, and there are several members in the family trying to be involved and take in charge, and they cannot come to an agreement what's best for the patients. And in that case, we advise the family to go through the courts and submit a legal guardianship paper It is a very time-consuming process and very costly. And in that case, the judge ultimately will determine who will be the legal guardian for the patient and manage patient's affair. We also have situations where there are no family members involved and no one is willing to be in charge. And in that case, APS, Adult Protective Services, may be involved, and the guardianship request will be submitted, and the judge will appoint a social services agency that provides this type of care for the patients. And when the patient has, the patients have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia at our clinic, Clevia and I, we will submit a medical ID bracelet to the agencies, usually Caring Kind, to make sure that they have the ID on them in case there's any wandering episodes occurred. There are other community resources we refer patients and caregiver to. Department of Aging has a great resource, Older Adult Center, previously known as Senior Center. This is federal funded program and it's free to all seniors over 60 or older. And we encourage patients to be socially active and do activities. So they do have activities planned out, including field trips, they do workshops, they do Zumba, and they do bingo. So they do all kinds of activities. So we suggest the family that to look up to centers near the neighborhood, throughout the cities, and then ask for the care manager at the older adult center for their calendar. Usually they have the calendar planned out for the month, and so patient can participate in those activities. And for older adult program, the home health aide can actually go with the patient for older adult program, older adult center. The older adult day program is for people with Medicaid. A lot of times that has to be requested through the insurance. If a person has Medicaid and they have home care in place, they may not cover adult day program at the same time as the home care. So the family will have to make the decision if they wanted the home care or they want the day program. So if that becomes a dilemma, then we suggest they can consider going to the older adult center. There are times that we have to make report to Adult Protective Services if we identify there's neglect in place. For example, we have seen financial exploitation, medical neglect, and physical abuse. So we do refer the patient to Adult Protective Services for additional assistance. There are also meals delivery program throughout in the city. God's Love We Deliver, they have a special program for patients with memory loss. They do provide a good meal and for Alzheimer's patients. So for that application, they do require a physician's signature for that particular program. There's also food pantry throughout the city. And they also, for Department of Aging, they also have respite care, which is a short-term assistance for the caregiver who needs a break from taking care of patients. And I know some of our caregiver support programs, they do have funding for that. There are also transportation requests we usually receive at the clinic. We do assist with accessory applications and referrals. MLTC, which is Managed Long-Term Care Plan, they do provide transportation, but only for medical appointments. They don't provide any other transportation assistance other than a medical appointment reasons. There's also JCC, Greater Coney Island. They do provide free transportation, but for Brooklyn residents. So they do require a New York ID to see if the patient's residence is in Brooklyn. We also encounter quite a lot of requests for the citizenship or power of attorney or any other home care advocacy assistance. So we refer to all these three organizations. They are funded by, I believe they are funded by the government. So they do have free resources and consultations for the family. So they can utilize the resource and at least get a free consultation in terms of what to do for power of attorney or any home care related inquiries. We do see a big increase of requests for housing at our clinic. And unfortunately, there is a long wait list for city-funded housing. We do refer them and assist them with the Housing Connect, NYCHA, and senior housing. But the wait list, I would have to say, I think it's ranged from 5 to 10 years, roughly. So some family or patient, unfortunately, they will go into shelter and they will be staying there for a period of time, and they will be issued a voucher. So they will be given a voucher. I think it's about, I'm not quite sure the amount right now, but before it was about $1,200. And the patient, they will be given that voucher and they can take to any landlord or rental offices that take the voucher, and they can get their own room or apartments that way. Recently, we have collaborated with Brooklyn Public Library for several outreach events, and they actually have good, they have a very good program called Creative Aging. And we also try to refer our patients to them because they do bring stimulated activities, art workshops with them. And they the program consists of about 6 to 12 sessions, art workshops for about 90 minutes. And they also have a social work program there that they can help with food stamp and housing application and counseling assistance. So there are actually other more resources. And if you are interested, you can reach out to Clivia and I. There are programs that in New York City that provided to caregivers, and Sunnyside and Caring County, we are happy that they are here today so they can share more about what services they can offer to the caregivers. And this is just some resources information. There are 10 organizations in New York State that are being funded by the Department of Health to provide caregiver support throughout the state. So if you have any questions that you wanted to reach out to us privately, feel free to contact Clivia and I. Our contact number and emails are listed.
Thanks, Eaton, for the presentation. I just want to remind everyone that each patient is basically different. Each family is different. So Eaton and I do take the time to meet with each family individually to try to come up with like a care plan that's going to be in the benefit of the patient, because we do take into consideration like what matters to the patient, if they can, give us that information, or at least to the family, what is important and what matters to them. So we do, take the time to meet with each family privately. That's what we do. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for sharing those resources with us. Next up, we have Sheila Williams. Ms. Williams is Director for Caregiver Support at Sunnyside Community Services. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration, a master's degree in leadership from Belhaven University in Memphis, Tennessee. Over the last 22 years, Ms. Williams has been championing for long-term services and support for older adults and those with disabilities. And Ms. Williams is going to share with us some of the resources that are available at Sunnyside Community Services. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. So I just briefly want to talk about our caregiver support program over at Sunnyside Community Services. Our mission is to improve the health and well-being of caregivers caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. We work with caregivers to reduce the social isolation that they experience and to lower their levels of stress by providing support that decrease the physical, emotional, and financial demands of caregiving. So a caregiver does not have to be a family member. It can be a neighbor, church member, or a friend. And with over half of our caregivers are working adults, we work to meet with caregivers where they are. So our services are available via phone, it's virtual or in person, and can be provided in the caregiver's or the care receiver's home, at one of our locations, or any place that is convenient for the caregiver. Our services are available in English, Spanish, and in Haitian Creole. As you've already heard, the impact and the responsibilities that go along with caregiving is unique to each family, is unpredictable and often overwhelming. And we recognize this and respond with a person-centered approach that is both culturally and linguistically responsive to our clients' needs and their families. We also recognize that caregivers have differing needs depending on the stages in their caregiving process. So we are able to address and respond with evolving supports. As one of 3 organizations awarded with the Caregiver Support Initiative in New York City, we are funded by the New York State Department of Health, and the services are no cost to the caregivers. And currently we serve caregivers in Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. So we have a dedicated team to help caregivers navigate the challenges of caring for someone. We provide individual and family counseling. We offer comprehensive assessments with a written care plan with achievable goals. We have support groups which provide caregivers an opportunity to share encouragement with each other and often share advice. We offer respite services either in the home or in a group setting. Our respite services, it provides a temporary break for our caregivers. And oftentimes caregivers use our respite services as a bridge as they're waiting on the approval of their Medicaid applications. We offer different educational workshops, which provide caregivers with the knowledge, the tools, and the information to support caregivers in their ongoing goals and enable them to navigate through the progression of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We offer a variety of wellness activities, which promotes the caregiver's emotional and physical well-being. This could be through our virtual Zumba classes or a caregiver cafe where caregivers come together to enjoy lunch at various restaurants across the city. It could be our boat tour, which is a tour around the Hudson, which many caregivers look forward to each year. These activities allow caregivers an opportunity to gather together with other caregivers and enjoy time away from their responsibilities. We provide assistive devices such as GPS trackers and door chimes to aid caregivers if they have a loved one that is wandering. We offer assistance with long-term planning, applying for entitlements and benefits such as Medicaid. And we also are able to make internal referrals to other programs at Sunnyside and community partners for those needing immigration services, case management, housing services, and other services needed by the caregivers and their families. Over the last 6 years, we have provided support to over 4,500 caregivers with services and with over 1,000 living in Brooklyn. And this came to us as a direct result from our partnership with SUNY Downstate. As you've heard from several on this panel, their families have been personally affected by someone living with Alzheimer's disease. And this is why services such as these at SUNY Downstate, at Sunnyside Community Services, and others are important to support caregivers and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Our final speaker this afternoon is Ms. Weijing Ji. Ms. Ji currently works as the Diversity Outreach Director and Chinese Outreach Manager of Caring Kind, where she provides support, education, case management service, consultation, and accessible community resources to the individuals and families affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. She builds partnerships with community healthcare, social services, and educational agencies. And she also edits and publishes a Chinese newsletter and organizes multiple respite programs, cultural events, and activities. Ms. Ji earned a Chinese language and art degree from Weizhou College of Education in China, a bachelor's in information system from Monroe College in New York, and a master of social work from New York University Silver School of Social Work. Ms. Ji is going to talk to us today about Caring Kind and the caregiver support services that are available.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Berger, for your introduction. I thank you so much for including me in this meeting. So I just use my time to cover a few things. The one, who we are, and then the second, what kind of service we provide to the community, and then what exactly I am doing for Caring Kind. So the first things, I really learned a lot from Dr. Reinhardt's the presentation. As everybody know, Alzheimer's disease is the special disease for everyone. Everybody can be involved with not only like the person with the dementia himself. So our service, Caring Crisis Service, is focused on community supports, family supports. Our mission is to create, deliver, and promote comprehensive and compassionate care and support service for the individual and family affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, and eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research. We achieve our mission by providing programs and services for individuals with dementia, their family and professionals, caregivers, increase public awareness, collaborate with the research centers, and inform public policy through advocacy. We have been in New York for more than 40 years. We are part of Alzheimer's Association New York chapter for almost 30 years, but we disaffiliate with Alzheimer's Association in 2015. We still here to provide the service to the community. Okay, so we have a lot of services and programs. The first is a helpline and dementia consultation. It includes the social worker service, education and training, support groups, media alert, NYC Wandering Safety Program, early station service, diversity outreach. I am part of them, and connect to culture. And also we launched a new program we call the MAP, Volunteer Match Program. I just want to explain a little bit more about the programs, like the helpline. So this is the first window to receive a lot of phone calls. Any families, they need help. So this is the first contact approach for the community. Education and training, we include a lot of things. We provide like the 4 very, very valuable workshops. The first one is understanding dementia. The second one is legal and finance. The third one is Medicaid, how to apply for the Medicaid. The fourth one is about the nursing home service. And then also the training we provide like the 2 parts. The one is provide to the professionals, caregivers. The other part is provide to the family members, include the friends. Support group in New York City, we almost like the 90 support group located in New York 5 boroughs. And they also made a lot Wandering Safety Program. I think Yi-Ting just mentioned, this is a very, very useful program for the earlier stage, the people. When they start wandering, I think this is very helpful. A lot of device, but I think this is very helpful. This is like the ID to like identify who they are when they did not bring everything on hand, and then they found by the police office or emergency room. People will see like the bracelet, and then to know that who they are. And then also earlier stage service. We provide now. We provide like we still provide like it's online, not in person yet. But after the pandemic, before the pandemic, we have the in-person service. But after the pandemic, we provide like the online service. Diversity outreach, we have like African American outreach, Latino outreach, Jewish outreach and Chinese outreach. I am the Chinese outreach manager. Connect to culture. Connect to culture. I think this is very, 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 very valuable and useful service to the family. I learned, actually, even though I am the social worker, I deal with a lot of like the cases or service the family with the dementia. But I still learn from our own like the programs. Connect to culture. Why I emphasize about this? Because you know, everyone know Lincoln Center, right? Lincoln Center, then they have the cancer. So everyone will very quiet, but Alzheimer's patient, they always making noises. Our connect to culture, they connect to the different, like the cultural organizations and music and art culture like organizations. They provide the green light. They provide the green light to the family with the dementia. They have like the cancer in Lincoln Center, but the audience, they can make the noises because they also can enjoy the moment. They enjoy like the music. They love the music at the moment. So this is a connect to culture. I think I really love this program. And the volunteer matchup program, what it is, like a lot of formal caregivers, they have like the experience to how to taking care of the person with the dementia when the person passes away, but they still have the valuable experience, skills. So we create this program to recruit formal caregivers, use their experience and skills to help the new families, the new caregivers. So this is also very helpful. All right, so the our survey about me, I just want to like this is all the contact information, the helpline. If everyone you want to make the referrals, and then you can call our helpline 646-744-2900, and then also our helpline emails. And then you can find our information, more information from our websites. And then our location, it's located at 360 Lexington Avenue, 3rd floor, New York. And my name is Wei Jinxi, and this is my contact number, direct number 646-744-2951, and then my email address. Very, very welcome. And also I want to talk a little bit more, if I have time, to introduce my roles in Caring Kai. So I am Chinese outreach manager for work at Caring Kai for almost 7 years. I am the senior social worker in the community for more than 20 years. But I know this is my time. This is over. So I hope I have in the future and then more time to introduce my roles. And then just feel free to contact us. Not only me, our Caring Kai's team. We are here to help Alzheimer's family and the community. Okay, thank you so much.
So, thank you. And I'd like to thank all the speakers for participating this afternoon. We have a number of questions from our audience. The first thing I'd like to ask personally is, we've heard a lot about some of the things that are risk factors, and we've also heard some of the resources to deal with Alzheimer's disease. But where are we in terms of treating Alzheimer's disease? Last year, there was a lot of information about a new drug that came out, but it seems there's a lot of controversy around that drug. So where are we with treatment? Is the drug of any benefit? If so, who should take it? And are there any current clinical trials that people might be eligible for as in terms of ameliorating or treating Alzheimer's disease. And if you can raise your hand, if you are interested in answering the question, that would be great. But Mike, if you can start, that would be appreciated.
So thank you for the question. And thank you everybody else for your discussion of all the resources that are available. I think in part, as we constructed this panel, the reason that we constructed it with experts in community service and caregiver support is that oftentimes these are some of the most beneficial interventions for our patients and caregivers. Our currently available medication treatments fall into three main classes. There are medications called acetylcholinesterase inhibitors like Aricept or donepezil, NMDA modulating therapy called memantine, or Namenda is the brand name. And then there's a newer class of medicine that was sort of entered the national consciousness this past year called Aduhelm, or aducanumab, which is an anti-amyloid immune therapy. So our treatments are important. Our medication treatments are important. They provide a modest benefit in symptomatically slowing the progression of illness, particularly the donepezil and the memantine. And they also provide some behavioral benefit, particularly when used together. They are not, unfortunately, at the present time, disease-modifying treatments, and this is what we had hoped Aduhelm or aducanumab would provide. That treatment has been met with some controversy, as Dr. Berger suggested, and it's currently only being covered by Medicare, the primary insurance provider for that treatment, within clinical trial settings. So it's not currently being covered by Medicare for use in normal, regular clinical settings, but rather just in clinical trial settings. But we do still have hope that as it's studied longer and we have more data about it, we'll be better able to understand its safety profile, which was of major concern. However, this represents, I think, the first of several compounds that will be coming to the market in a similar line of therapy that's targeting amyloid in the brain, trying to remove the waste product that's building up in the brain in the hope of slowing or maybe even stopping the progression of the illness. And we should be hearing more about perhaps two more compounds. And there are clinical trials that are available at some of our partner sites in particular that are targeting both amyloid and possibly tau, and using other technologies. I unfortunately don't have the list of those trials with me today. I would be happy to share that with the group.
Next question that I'd like to pose is, we've gone through a number of resources and a number of organizations providing those resources. If I'm a caregiver, where do I start? What's the first point of entry in order to tap into the resources? Do I go to a doctor? Do I call up Care in Kind? How do I enter the system and begin to access services? And if Ms. Torres and Ms. Chang could kick that off, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so when a patient and a family member come to our clinic, okay, at the end of the visit, Ethan and I will usually refer the family. We provide them with information on all the agencies, okay, because we work with all of them. So we also refer families directly to Sunnyside if they need specific things. For example, like if they need help processing the Medicaid application or with the tracking, like the watch and things like that. We also refer families, to Care in Kind when they need like support groups. And I also know that Sunnyside does the same. We also refer to the Alzheimer's Association. Mm-hmm. So, we do refer the families. And then when they come back, we also ask them, have you followed up? We also, once we email the other agency, we usually get a response back from them, letting us know that they have made contact with the family that we referred. So like that, we know that the family is being serviced by either Sunnyside, and at Sunnyside, we have a contact with Elizabeth Daniel and with Josephine Walker, who are our contacts, and then at Caring Kind and at the Alzheimer's Association also.
So if I'm hearing correctly, are you saying that the best thing to do is first try to go to one of the centers of excellence for Alzheimer's disease, get an evaluation, and then determine with the caregivers and the social workers within the center which services are most important to access? I
Yes.
see everyone shaking their heads.
Because most of the centers of excellence for Alzheimer's disease do have a social worker attached to them. So, the social worker usually is part of the encounter or the patient encounter. And if not, then at the end of the visit, Dr. Reinhardt in our office or some of the other psychiatrists will come and get Eaton and I and say, you need to see this family. And we initiate the conversation.
And also, I think I would say majority of our patients were referred by the medical providers or specialty doctors. And we're sort of like the point of contact where we can share the resources from our end. And then we, like Clivia mentioned, we refer and we connect and we follow up afterwards. So that way will be easier for the patient knowing and the family knowing that what services actually they need and they can benefit from.
And also, we follow up with patients ourselves because we give them our contact information and they keep us abreast as to what's going on. So, we also do our own follow-up just to make sure that they are being, serviced.
And Dr. Reinhardt, if you can just at some point put up the number for the Alzheimer's Center of Excellence again, and how to get an
Put it
appointment.
in the chat.
No,
That would be really valuable in order for people, so they understand that really one of the points of entry is actually coming to the center and being evaluated. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that we're located actually in Nursing Station 52 on the 5th floor, because I don't think we mentioned that, but we are on the 5th floor, Nursing Station 52.
So what Ms. Torres is referring to is at University Hospital at Downstate, the Alzheimer's Clinic, the Center for Excellence, is located on the 5th floor of the institution. And you see right there the numbers to access the clinic and to have an evaluation to get plugged into services. Michael, anything you wanted to add to that?
So
Dr. Berger, may I jump in for one quick moment? Sorry. We'll put together a list of resources that we will also provide when this recording goes live, so that people will have access to all of the contact information for today and resources.
So in terms of the epidemiology of Alzheimer's, a question came up in the chat that asked about racial differences in Alzheimer's. Can you comment on that, Dr. Gustafson?
Yeah, so I mean, there have been some data published that do show that I'll just broadly refer to underrepresented groups in the United States are potentially at an increased risk for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And a majority of those, well, there's data coming from different places, but for example, from Kaiser Permanente, Northern California, for example. So they've been able to compare rates among African Americans. They've got data on Latinos as well as Asian Americans and a bit on American Indians. I just think at this stage in the United States, I think our knowledge of this particular topic is underdeveloped. I will say that. But I mean, if you think about, for example, when I mentioned today that vascular risk factors are very important when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, and then you just think about which communities in the United States tend to have, more hypertension, more hyperlipidemias, they're overweight or obese. So if we go on the basis of what people are presenting with during their adulthood, and then think about certain underrepresented groups, then there might be, those are ways that we can actually better tackle this problem versus a focus on race and ethnicity. It's unclear. So for example, the ApoE4 allele, which is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and dementia, that was shown early on in North American, white, and European, Northern European communities. The distribution of, for example, that genetic aspect of risk is different, very different in African American communities than it is in Northern European or white communities. So some of the risk factors that we do point to and some of the literature that's out there are based on cohorts of individuals aging who are primarily white or Northern European. That's changing. I will have to say that because more and more studies are now being funded for longitudinal follow-up, like the one I'm working on now, which is aging HIV-infected people who are now surviving to old age, where they can develop dementia too. And we're a very diverse cohort in terms of race and ethnicity. So some of these cohorts are, I'll call it coming of age, and I think we'll know a little bit more about some of those differences moving forward. But those differences do, however, play a role, as was mentioned already, related to interventions and what's appropriate. What do you do, for example, a Chinese patient with Alzheimer's disease or caregiver versus someone who's African American or who's Caribbean, right? There might be very different ways that you approach interventions for Alzheimer's disease depending on people's culture and background.
So just to follow that question up, if I have a parent or a sibling or a grandparent that has dementia or had dementia, should I have genetic testing? And if so, what kind of genetic testing is potentially relevant?
Genetic testing is not advocated right now for Alzheimer's disease. This question comes up a lot at scientific meetings that I attend. Even thinking about something like the ApoE4 allele, its association, its risk is not very much higher associated with having an ApoE4 than having hypertension or being overweight and obese. It's all around 2.5 fold higher risk associated with any of these vascular risk factors and with the ApoE4 allele. And so unless you've got an early onset Alzheimer's disease, right, which are mainly familial forms of AD, people getting dementia when they're in their 30s or 40s, like Down syndrome or these types of conditions, those have very strong genetic components. And of course, if you're getting a diagnosis that early, you will have a genetic test because they are going to look for mutations in all, APP protein and things like that. So, but not for people growing older and aging who develop dementia, no.
Yeah, so another follow-up question is, in the graph that you presented on age, the graph cut off at 65 and it looked like it went to 0, but now you're saying that there's early onset dementia. Can you comment on the risk of Alzheimer's across different ages? And can young people get dementia? And is there anything different we can do for those people versus older people who are getting dementia as a part of overall aging?
I don't know, Dr. Reinhardt, if you want to. I mean, the familial forms of dementia where people are getting Alzheimer's disease diagnoses in their 30s and 40s or even early 50s are extremely rare. The only other thing that might come into play for younger people who are given a diagnosis of quote unquote dementia, it might be due to alcohol, or it might be due to some of the other factors that Dr. Reinhardt mentioned. But really the numbers are so small that if we're talking about an aging related, what we call sporadic dementia, we usually start the clock at around 60, 65 versus any younger. But Dr. Reinhardt, please.
So
From an
I'll
epi
just
standpoint.
add to your comments. So early onset dementia clinically is defined as folks less than 65 years of age, right? So folks, so they still may be relatively older adults in many cases, and there may be genetic contribution to those cases or lifestyle factors that have contributed to that person's risk and incidence of dementia. And that includes a group of different conditions, right, that have earlier onset. So we've talked mostly about Alzheimer's disease today, of which there are familial early onset variants. And then of course, there are conditions like frontotemporal lobar dementia, which happens, degeneration rather, which happens sometimes starting in the 50s, or Lewy body dementia, which may start a bit earlier as well. And then the treatment for each of those conditions is of course different, right? And so that's why appropriate comprehensive diagnostic care is really important. Frontotemporal dementia, for instance, is a less studied condition, and our knowledge about treatment is less well evolved. So it's important to come in, be identified so that we can assist you in enrolling in cohort studies and in clinical trials and find treatments that are of more value to you. And there are some differences in how each group of conditions responds to the available approved treatment. I could give a long talk, but I want to make sure that I leave room for everybody else's questions.
Yeah, so a difficult question that comes up, that, and it's also culturally sensitive, is telling someone that they actually have dementia. Can you comment on that conversation? How do you deal with some of the potential barriers across different cultures about informing a patient that they have a disease like dementia? It really comes up as a frequent question on the chat.
So I can start, but Clivia and Yiting maybe just.
They don't like the question.
Well, I think that they're important to the answer. So
Right.
Jing and Sheila, I think hopefully you'll step in too, I think, in this discussion. I think we as a group of centers of excellence for Alzheimer's disease believe very, very strongly that all adults receiving these assessments should receive a firm and as accurate as medical science allows understanding of what their diagnosis is. We believe that this is our ethical obligation so that folks can not only have heard the words, but also become their own advocates and decide for themselves how they want to live their lives. They can plan, they can engage with their families, they can enroll in clinical trials. So I've been doing this since 2013 when I started my fellowship in geriatric psychiatry under Carl Cohen. And I will say very, very clearly, though, as a human being, that delivering that diagnosis has never gotten easier. I will say that I've become practiced at it, but it's never become easier. It's a life-changing diagnosis. We speak in our circle of practice about Alzheimer's as a condition in which we lose our loved one twice. We lose them as the condition progresses, and then we lose them when they ultimately pass. And this is a very gentle process where we review the information. We review the diagnostic criteria so that people understand in lay language what's happening. And then we deliver the diagnosis in a culturally sensitive way. And for each group of people, that requires very different educational practices. And I would let maybe Yiting and Clivia jump in and talk a bit about the different cultures we treat in our clinic if we have time to elaborate further.
I'm sorry, we had to step away because we had an emergency. Okay, so, but anyway, so like when we have families, like I can talk as a Latina woman, when we have families that come to the clinic, sometimes it's really difficult for them to understand. And, sometimes the Latino families do not get help until the person is in the middle stage of the disease or towards the end of the disease. And one of the things that I encourage them is, like when I do outreach especially, is that it's important for early detection. It's important that if you see certain signs, Yiting and I give out like the signs, there's a pamphlets that, involve like the different warning signs that you should look for and things like that. So we do talk to them about that. Like I know I spend a lot of time with them in the clinic. We have, we have people that are from Haiti. We have people that are from Russia. We have people that are from Asia. We have the Latino population. So we have a mix of influx, let's say, of different patients that we see with nationalities. And we really try to be culturally sensitive when we meet with them and when we talk with them, to just explain to them, you know, like the challenges that they may face, because every stage is different for some of the patients. So when we do our outreach, you know, in the community, we do talk about those about the changes to expect and how, you know, the family can best be prepared to deal with them. And then the question does come up of like, do I place my family member in a nursing home or do we keep them at home? Which is also another big problem for a lot of the families. So, you know, thank God now in New York City, there's a program called the Nursing Home Transition Program that offers for most families the 24-hour care, and it's through Medicaid. So that's why we encourage people, if the patient is, you know, in a situation that really needs home care 24 hours a day and they don't have Medicaid, please try to get them Medicaid as soon as possible, so then we can refer them to this program. They also go through the appeal process of the regular home care, then they do the external appeal to try to get more hours. So it is complicated, but we walk them through it, you know, being mindful of the culture, what they accept, you know, what they not understand and things like that.
Yeah, so thank you for addressing that, because one of the questions that always comes up is how able are we able to keep people at home in the home setting and care for them versus having to put them in an institution. And certainly with some of our cultures in Brooklyn, there's a real hesitancy to institutionalize individuals with late stage dementia. However, from personal experience, I know there are times when patients with end stage dementia can get violent.
Right.
Certainly, you don't want to have dangerous situations in the home. So it's good to hear that there's a nursing home transition program where we're able to monitor that. So it looks like we're at our 2:30 time limit. If anyone else has a question they'd like to raise now, Dawn or anyone of our participants, this would be a great time to do it. If not, I want to thank everyone for their participation. It's wonderful to see how many resources there are available in Brooklyn. I really am grateful to Care and Kind and to Sunnyside for participating with us today. It's important for caregivers as well as patients to know they're not alone in this journey. There is a lot of support available, and it'd be great if you can get into the system through the Center of Excellence or one of the Centers of Excellence. But remember, this is a journey and we recognize that people need assistance. So please reach out and don't be hesitant to seek help to work with these patients and this disease. So thank you.
I'd just like to add my my thanks to everyone who participated today, for those who joined us on the chat, for those who sent us questions in advance, that we were able to get to a number of other questions that we normally would not necessarily be able to get to in a real-time circumstance. So I do appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's support today. I'm particularly proud to be part of SUNY Downstate, where we can talk about the work that we're doing to help Alzheimer's and dementia patients. So again, from a very selfish perspective, I'm grateful for the opportunity that we've had today to share resources and to learn from each other. And we're hopefully planning to do more of these things. So please look out for more information from us. We will have this posted up in the next day or so with a link of resources, and it'll be sent electronically center-wide so that people can actually follow up and look at this recording in itself. And we'll also send this out on social media. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Reinhardt, Dr. Gustafson, Dr. Berger, Clivia, Yitang, Sheila, and Weisheng, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and support. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for putting this together.